লাইভে যাবো কেমনে? কি রে কাজ করে না কে? কাজ করে না কে? দেখতে
The wilderness can turn from a peaceful escape into an isolating nightmare in seconds. Whether it's a violent, unprovoked ambush on a remote dirt trail, or an unnaturally pale figure watching you from the shadows. If the deep woods suddenly turned against you, what would you do? Have you ever ridden a dirt bike far into a forest trail and wondered what could be waiting somewhere between the trees? Most riders expect to come across deer birds or the soft rustling of small animals moving through the brush. But the riders shown in this video encountered something far more disturbing during what began as a normal off-road ride through the wilderness. The footage was uploaded by the YouTube channel Brappers and was recorded in January 2015. The video shows two dirt bike riders exploring a remote mountain forest while traveling along a quiet dirt trail. The two riders pause briefly along the dirt road. Nothing unusual stands out at first, just trees' silence and the familiar scenery of a remote forest trail used by off-road riders. Then, without warning, a white car suddenly races around a bend in the road and skids to a stop near the riders. The car door swings open and a man quickly steps out of the vehicle. Almost immediately, one of the riders moves toward him and the situation escalates rapidly. The second rider initially rides away up the hill, possibly to create distance or look for help. But he quickly turns back. Leaving a friend behind is clearly not an option. When he returns to the scene, his friend is already on the ground while the man is attacking him. According to the person who uploaded the footage, the man claimed that he owned the surrounding forest land. However, the video itself provides no way to confirm that claim. Then, the video suddenly cuts off. The description of the clip states that the man did not stop, but that is the final piece of information available. Viewers are left with a series of unanswered questions. What caused the sudden attack? Who exactly was the man who came out of the car? Was he really the owner of the land, or was something else happening in that remote forest location? If you were riding a dirt bike through a remote forest trail, and a stranger suddenly rushed toward you from a vehicle like this, what would you do in that moment? Daniel Mercer operates the YouTube channel Creepy Travels, where he records overnight camping trips in remote wilderness areas that locals often describe as dangerous, abandoned, or tied to strange encounters. On November 17th, 2025, he traveled deep into a quiet lakeside area surrounded by forested mountains in the United States. People living nearby say the place has gradually developed an uneasy reputation over time. Despite those warnings, Daniel decided to spend the night there alone.
This is a sketchy place. There's actually 4 places that I go film because usually something is seen. It's a hard decision on this place and then that place up deep in the mountains that has witch symbols hanging all in the trees at a spot that everybody of different things. I'll do a video. I don't want to talk too much about it until I do a video with y'all. This place is out, secluded.
Continuing the kind of remote exploration and solo camping content his channel is known for. What made the location even more disturbing was its past. Years earlier, a body had reportedly been found somewhere near the old boat ramp, not far from where Daniel planned to stay. Authorities determined that the death had not been caused by natural reasons. Since then, many locals have treated the surrounding woods with caution.
It was Aisha. I just heard like somebody's watch. That was weird. That was weird. There goes those footsteps that you hear walking behind you. Yeah. I've got chicken bumps all over me. Not goosebumps, but chicken bumps.
Giving the area a reputation that made it stand out among other remote camping locations. As darkness settled over the lake, Daniel began hearing movement somewhere in the distance. At first, the sounds were subtle, small shifts of leaves somewhere beyond the tree line. But the noises kept repeating, returning again and again in the stillness of the forest. At one point, he noticed what looked like eye shine, faintly reflecting through the woods. Something appeared visible in the darkness, but it was too far away for the camera to capture clearly. The longer he listened, the more it seemed like something was circling the area instead of simply passing through.
I've seen so many things in here. So big of an uneasy feeling. So many shadow bastards. I've had to run out of here before. I don't want to do this. Can't believe I'm going to sleep here tonight again. Just has that feeling that you're going to turn around and something's going to be there. Look at this. 1832.
As he moved deeper into the forest, the feeling of being watched became stronger. Instead of sleeping in a tent out in the open forest, Daniel chose to camp inside his vehicle, hoping the car would offer more protection during the night. But what happened around the vehicle later made him question whether he was safe at all.
Somebody was trying to get in my Bronco.
As Daniel drifted off to sleep inside his car, the quiet night was suddenly interrupted by movement outside the vehicle. Shortly afterward, several knocking sounds echoed through the darkness around the lakeside campsite. Moments later, the vehicle began shaking violently, waking Daniel as someone or something outside appeared to pull at one of the doors. With his heart racing, he grabbed his camera and stepped outside to investigate. The clearing, however, was completely empty. There were no footsteps, no lights, and no visible sign that anyone or anything had been there. Eventually, the night settled into a deceptive calm, but Daniel could still feel that the forest had not truly released him. Every shadow between the trees seemed to flicker with movement, and every rustle of leaves sounded like a warning he could not ignore. The knocking outside his Bronco stayed in his memory, and the violent shaking of the vehicle left a lingering sense of dread. What might have happened if he had chosen to sleep in a tent, instead fully exposed to the darkness of the forest? Even after leaving the lake and returning to safety, the location still holds its secrets. In isolated wilderness areas during overnight camping, cameras do not always capture everything happening beyond the tree line. Sometimes the most unsettling moments are the ones that happen just outside the frame. If you were alone in a remote forest campsite like this and heard those sounds in the dark, would you stay the night or leave immediately? Shadow Hollow is a YouTube channel run by wilderness documentarian Ethan Cole, a solo explorer known for recording expeditions deep inside remote forests, often linked to regional legends and unexplained sightings. On February 22nd, 2026, Ethan traveled into the remote Okanagan Valley in Canada, an isolated wilderness area, where locals have long shared stories about a creature known as the Wendigo. The figure comes from northern folklore and is believed to inhabit deep forests while preying on animals and humans alike. Early spring had just her winter, leaving the terrain cold, damp, and unusually quiet. Still,
I personally am not a believer, but apparently there's some pretty creepy sounds around these woods, but I wouldn't know. It's dead silent out here. Dead silent. Can't hear anything besides my breathing. There's a lot of vines out here. And, crazy amount of vines.
as Ethan moved deeper into the valley, the surroundings began to feel unnaturally still. The forest was unusually quiet, with no wind moving the branches, and no animals stirring in the undergrowth. For a brief moment, he considered that the warnings shared by locals might simply be superstition. But almost immediately after that thought crossed his mind, the atmosphere shifted from calm silence to something far more unsettling.
Nothing yet, though. Nothing yet. Okay, what was that? Okay. That is the third or fourth time something's crashed behind me. I'm gonna keep a bit of an eye out now. Like a noise behind you in the woods, but 4 times. Sketchy. So. I don't know.
While navigating a steep section of terrain, he began hearing intermittent crashing sounds, along with a sharp whistle somewhere behind him. At first, the noises resembled branches snapping or debris shifting across the forest floor. In remote wilderness areas, those kinds of sounds are common, but the pattern continued repeating. Something behind him in the woods was moving, possibly even watching, yet whatever it was never revealed itself among the trees. Even so, Ethan continued forward, unaware that every step was leading him deeper into something he could neither see clearly nor understand.
Hello? What the fuck? What's that? I should not go that way. I want to go this way now. What the? There's stuff all over here now.
As darkness approached quickly, Ethan attempted to retrace his route using a fallen tree he had noticed earlier as a reference point. While moving through the forest, he began noticing shapes and movement in the distance. Moments later, a tall, pale, human-like figure briefly appeared before disappearing into the shadows between the trees. The The sight immediately changed his decision about which direction to go. Instead of continuing forward, he turned and moved away from that area entirely. But the path he believed would lead him to safety, instead, carried him deeper into a darker section of the forest.
Is this a sign? Okay. Looks like a sign or something. Hell. Oh, shit. Oh, hell no.
For a moment, it seemed he had escaped whatever had been following him through the valley. But then he saw an unnaturally pale figure pressed against an old marker, its gaze fixed directly on him. A cold shiver ran down his spine, and without hesitation, Ethan ran blindly through the trees, while the forest itself seemed to close in around him. Eventually, the forest returned to its normal stillness, but the questions remained. In remote forests like this, strange sounds and fleeting shapes can sometimes come from wildlife shifting terrain, or other hikers moving through the trees. But when the same patterns repeat again and again in complete isolation, the experience becomes harder to dismiss. If you were alone in a remote valley like this during a camping expedition and saw something watching you from the forest, would you keep exploring, or would you leave before night fully takes over? This footage comes from the YouTube channel Tim Maroof, managed by a Russian creator known for exploring unusual locations and mysterious experiences. His content centers on investigating the unknown and searching for explanations behind unexplained events. In this particular video, what starts as a simple overnight trip gradually turns into a tense and unpredictable camping encounter deep within a forest surrounded by unsettling local legends. Tim travels to a forest that locals believe holds a dark secret. According to regional stories, a mysterious sorcerer is said to live deep within these woods. Some believe this figure protects the world from unseen creatures, while others fear he may be the source of the strange horrors rumored to exist there. The story has circulated for years, and most people avoid the forest, especially after nightfall. But driven by curiosity, Tim decides to spend the night there on July 16th, 2023. As the sun begins to set, Tim and his loyal dog, Kusham.